Our adventure would start off like any other, with one loser of a no-named summoner having failed in his mission to protect humanity, to deliver us from harm. But all was not lost. Our hero, Beef Chadwick the Third, was here to right these wrongs, to finally save us all from... Well, good job. Didn't shoot a gun once. Easiest run of my life. Okay. Being the walking tank of a man that he is, Beef Chadwick the Third wouldn't go down that easily. At the start of the run, I wouldn't have access to any summons of any kind. An unfortunate turn of events for a lesser man to be sure. But our hero is no lesser man. No, he's so much more. It also helps that the tutorial will give you AI companions that'll do all the shooting and kicking for you. It's not my fault that they're engaging in non-summon-based violence, and I won't be held accountable for their actions. One wasn't enough, though. Inadequate, even. Despite being impaled off-screen for monetization reasons, and the two of us giving up entirely, the plot walked in to solo the encounter. The plot's companion used a game mechanic to plot device me back into working order, just in time to find the game's first boss. 2 more guns, though, means there are now 3, which is 1 more than Beef Chadwick the Third normally has, his being carved of flesh with his carefully sculpted body. The boss would seemingly change targets at random. I chose to keep my distance and allow them to handle it. With everything being the same color palette, though, it was hard to see things like small projectiles coming my way. Also, your allies still do you harm should you end up in their way. I didn't really test it with melee, but I got shot a lot throughout this playthrough. Sometimes even by enemies. Without sustaining so much as a single solitary scratch, I would make it through on my first attempt. Effortlessly, even. Before long, we arrived in the new ward. Or maybe it's the old ward. It's still called Ward 13, but it looks different. It might just be the exterior area from before, but regardless, the layout is better. It'd be even better if they didn't put important NPCs ages away from the rest of things, but can't win every battle. For everything else, there's a map. I'm glad that they patched it, but for the first half, or probably more of my playthrough, there was about a second-long stutter every time you tried to leave the menus. I didn't like responding right after they were opened either. Because the game can't be paused, it meant that trying to navigate was scarier than it usually is for me. Because this time, it was also dangerous. Luckily, my fears would be alleviated by one of the most powerful things on any plane of existence. Friendship. By choosing Handler, I would cement my choice to never gun, only summon. This friend, this dog, would be my key to victory. Or so I thought. I followed the leader around these parts because he wanted to show me his new disappearing act. Short-lived. Little did he know, disappearing acts aren't impressive unless you can make something reappear. I don't think he got the memo though, because he instead made plot disappear. Now, this wasn't the first bug I encountered in the game, nor would it be the last, but I don't think that's how dogs nor elevators work. I'd like to remind you that I played the game around release, and all bugs that I encountered may or may not be patched by the time you get a chance to try this game. Assuming you want to try this game and haven't yet. Just keep in mind that it's quite possibly still buggy, and the performance is really inconsistent, and it crashed a lot. But it was fun, plus you can pet the dog. Anyways, after about an hour of lore being spewed at me, I made my way out into the world proper. A place called Narud, and almost every single enemy in the overworld can fly. Unfortunately, dogs cannot. And much like the last game, that's going to be an issue. As is my dog's inability to sustain damage and keep going. Damn, dude. The poor thing's trying its best. Luckily, I know Remnant well enough to know that I just need to get into a dungeon to change my fate. It's not like there were a lot of weird changes, and the game as a whole felt both familiar and completely foreign or anything. I set my dog against a series of enemies in hopes of farming some experience. Give myself a leg up. That was going fine until Josh showed up. It's big, it's ugly, and it constantly spawns enemies. So despite being close to the ground, my dog can't do much against it. Then I couldn't find my dog at all. I tried calling it, looking around, only to find that if I looked through walls, I could see its outline in an enemy, and its health bar. An enemy ate my still living dog. I don't know if this is a bug or a feature, but either way, that's all of my damage just gone, and I only got it out by resting at a world stone. By which I mean dying, because you can't ever rest at a stone when enemies are even vaguely thinking about the possibility of you in this game. Then came the first real boss of the run, Josh 2. Unlike the prequel, Josh 2 was fully capable of staying entirely out of range at all times. It does a ton of damage, and I can't hurt it at all. I would find out later that it has a summon-based reward, but not one that I would ever see, because this would be the first hard stop to my progress. First of many. I traveled home. I traveled far. I traveled wide. I got chased by this weird ball thing. In retrospect, what the hell even was that thing? I don't think I ever saw that again. I tried rerolling the campaign to get a better start, only to find out that the world order in the campaign is random. Yeah, Narud isn't the starting area. Or rather, it isn't necessarily always the starting area. You can reroll the entire campaign, but keep your character progress. This was huge. Vital, even. Without this little discovery, the whole run may have been lost to time, because I consider myself to be a busy person and I have limited time to spend on things. This particular area has a more city-like aesthetic, with some vaguely elven things going on while people shoot at you throughout the streets. Cool place. Looks very Bloodborne. Maybe Lies of P? I don't know. Seems cool either way. When you're out of combat, you now have infinite stamina, which is amazing. It also just feels like you get places faster, which fixes a couple of my biggest complaints about the previous game. If you're not careful though, you'll be playing Tony Hawk before you know it. I experienced a lot of bugs in this game, but not one other came even close to being half this radical. Jokes aside, the movement has never felt so good. You automatically jump off of things if you roll into most ledges, so unless you choose your rolls very poorly, you can get some sick jumps for premium running away action. Just remember to be smart while traversing. Bosses though would continue to feel difficult. A giant pig that can teleport you with a screen effect that I'm very selectively editing around for photosensitivity reasons, and an area size small enough to make the Capra Demon blush. What's not to love? The answer is this. I don't like this. Give me some space! Of course, range wouldn't stop being an issue just because I swapped the map. This boss fight requires either somehow getting my dog up there or shooting up at people I can't reach. So this was another wash, and keep in mind, the information on the game while I was playing wasn't exactly well developed. Sure, there's a good amount of documentation on where to go now, but while I was playing, it felt an awful lot like stabbing in the dark. And stab I did, proverbially speaking. The AI was taking things a bit more literally, swinging at me and my dog even through walls, but of course, gravity was always much better at keeping me down. I came across a court of people on an entirely different world. The long and short of it is that each group has some sort of world-ending or vitally important to them thing that only you can handle for reasons. Pretty much every one of them boils down to them wanting you to murder something for them. These ones are particularly racist, though. Unbelievably enough, though, I managed to find this ring relatively early on in my adventure. It may not look like much, but it's the backbone of the whole run. With it, I get 5% of all damage that my summons deal as health. I got a good few rings and talismans that would help, but none quite as much as this one in particular. I similarly picked up some helpful perks from this grove here. You get a sort of quiz, and you get one depending on your answers. Damage reduction or white health regen. I picked both, because I had to reroll this place a lot and ran into her multiple times. You can only get one on each roll. For every victory, though, must come immense suffering. And a boss that I can't fight. I'm also going to spare you the madness screen effect. Glad the bleed flashing didn't come back, but there's still a couple in here that... I don't know. I also found a giant person. Do you have a summon for me? No? Okay. I just need a ranged option. One of the first bosses I was able to beat in a long while was this guy, and a lot of the damage was dealt by him walking into his own fire, which technically isn't a summon, but I also didn't do it, so it doesn't count. Beef Chadwick the Third is only responsible for Beef Chadwick the Third. Now, somewhere around 10 to 13 hours into the game, I knew that you could re-roll this place to get a Blood Moon event. If you left a ward 13 and came back enough times, these little purple wisps would spawn in the Forbidden Grove. You can respawn them by going through a zone transition and coming back. Do not leave to the ward while it is active. I couldn't damage them with anything other than a gun at the moment, so that's what I did. But I have 3 justifications for this. 1. Seriously, I was about 10 or so hours into the game, and I couldn't really do anything in terms of combat except hope that my dog wouldn't die, which it did. Often. 2. I would be using this to get an account item that you can start the game with after the fact, meaning I could technically start over without using a gun to have the Pierce run possible. I wasn't going to because of Justification 1 and Justification the Third. I would go on to find out that there is in fact something that can hit these. It's hard to line up, and I don't have footage of it to be honest, but the Nebula weapon mod Nanoswarm can damage them. I farmed out a ton of resources slowly and painfully, but with the essence you get from the Wisp, I was able to get the dedicated Summoner class. It gained some self-healing, which is nice. It also lets me use my class skill to call forward some rollers. They don't have much more use than my dog, but more damage is more damage. They cost some health to summon, and they have a long cooldown, but anything is an improvement from what I had going previously. I ventured near. I ventured far. I admired art. Funny Jester Man gives magic teleporty quill. I tried my hand at intellectual combat, and frankly, mostly just hurt myself more than anything. I brute forced my way through at least a handful of puzzles without realizing they were puzzles, because I'm dense, and this game is full of so many puzzles. Fun fact, she has a summon if you kill her via her alternate method, which involves hitting her with a melee weapon. So that's off the table. I've been at it for so long, I was finding a lot of repeat areas and enemies, so I was delighted to see something new whenever it would come up. I think all of the farming was really getting to my dog, though. Luckily, this big guy was understanding, and they settled on a staring contest instead of combat. Boss fights were more a matter of whether or not the boss would come low enough for my minions to attack than anything else. The rest was just time. A lot of time. Luckily, I found this big ugly thing that holds something genuinely helpful. Other than pulling me in close, it was a matter of staying back and letting them chew it up. Easy peasy. Next up was the self-building giant stone place that's in every Darksiders. I mean Remnant. Honestly, not even a complaint. It's a cool aesthetic. This place holds many important things, and after being brutally murdered by Grime, I made my way back home. I really should get around to finally playing Grime. It looks really good. An important note is that apparently my summons attacking things generates weapon mod power, which is great. I was able to craft Nebula, and its weapon mod lets loose a bunch of nanobots that will harmlessly float around me until an enemy is within range during the duration. Then it'll seek and slaughter any and all who would threaten their master, Beef Chadwick the Third. Well, any and all who aren't me, because when it comes to me and cliffs, you know the expression look before you leap? Well, my vision ain't all that good. In addition to my general summon functions, my summon brand summons come with a self-destruct button, which is legally still a summon ability, so it counts. It can be used to open doors like this one here. Unfortunately, though, you can't do the same to destroy the weak points on these cubes for the purpose of this boss fight. Even if I could, I wouldn't be able to hit the ones in the air. And no, Nebula doesn't work for this either, so unfortunately, I do need to use a real weapon. Literally, the starting pistol does plenty of damage with a single bullet. It's required, and it's awful, but pretty much any ranged weapon can handle this. And while this is technically a boss, it's also closer to a puzzle, so no, you can't beat the game with only summons. Ironic that a series of cubes would be my undoing. Also, the run isn't over yet, depending on how you want to look at it. I don't know. I don't make the rules. Hold on. Okay, thank you. I've just been informed that I do indeed make the rules. Also, I can't decide if I love this boss or hate this boss. It's so precise and it's so build agnostic. You either shoot good or you don't progress. I think, given that it's an RPG, I'm going to err on the side of disliking it for stifling player choice, but I also kind of really like it. I think this is a great optional boss, or a bad mandatory one. And it is mandatory. Maybe I'll see how that opinion holds up later down the line. After getting through a lot, I found a giant eye, and finally, plot. Do you know how long I've been looking for you? Look, even my clothes are excited about making some real progress. The giant eye wants me to keep doing what I'm doing. So, thanks for that. It'd send me to worlds that I've already visited more times than I could remember. So many hours just hunting for stuff. Eventually, though, I reached a high enough level in Summoner to summon flyers. They do exactly what it says on the tin. But having needed something flying or ranged this whole time, it kind of hurts to get flight and range in one. But also, it helps, so I guess I can't complain too much. At the same time, though, it felt hollow. I had lowered the difficulty notch to handle farming. Now that I finally had what I needed to begin the run, I reset my progress. Raised it back up to Veteran. And am I a weenie for not playing it on Nightmare for my first run? Maybe. But here's the thing. Sausage is delicious. So checkmate. It gave me a chance to see more of the bosses that the game has to offer, while also actually having the ability to beat them. Fancy that. This one, for instance, has some really weird stuff going on with the environment and cover mechanics. Keeps you on your toes. And I don't feel super warmly about a lot of the bosses. They're definitely more gimmick heavy, but they're also a bit more interesting this go around. If you can't be good at things, be novel instead. Hey, you put that down right this instant! By this point in the run, more research had been done. Hard to say how some of the folks get information up on the game so quickly, but a new archetype had been discovered. A friend of mine tipped me off to some of the woes that I might face, and I thought it might be a good answer. So I ventured back to Naru to find the engineer class. Or, I tried. It spawned the armor, but not the item to get the engram, so I had to roll a new adventure and run the whole map again, looking for a tiny outcropping so I could start leveling the damn thing. With it, I got the new turret summon. It unfortunately had to replace something. Sorry, pup. The price we pay for greatness. And while this still is technically using a gun by carrying it, I felt that summoning the gun and associated bullets was at least closer to the spirit of things. So while this fight is still a compromise, I feel it's a better one. And if that doesn't make you feel any better, just know that using the slower movement that you get with this gun caused me to die repeatedly, and I spent somewhere between 1 and 2 hours here on this one block puzzle. On my quest to be one step ahead of my end boss woes, I stopped by to armor up. Following a hidden path in the labyrinth, I got a full set of the heaviest armor in the game. Spoilers, it sucks. You lose your dodge, and for what? A little more defense? Enemies still shred your health, and you don't get the stagger defense that you get in the first game. It takes a little longer for enemies to stun lock you to death. Great! 4 stars. 2 enthusiastic thumbs up. On my adventure of still not fully knowing where things are, I came across Alan. My nanoswarm only heard it for a moment. I'd be here all day trying to kill it with that route. So I instead elected to blow up my summons repeatedly. I used my turret for actual defense. I'm not touching it, so it counts as a summon. Shut up. But it meant I could only really do damage when my summons eventually came off of cooldown, so this took a second. By this point, though, I was more or less trucking. Get it? 'Cause the hat? Regardless, Beef Chadwick the Third had slowly become a force to be reckoned with. This boss was genuinely important. First time in a second. It goes between trying to attack you and just having tentacles do it for them. But my survivability being what it's become, I was able to sustain myself through a lot of damage, even when I couldn't move due to root rot. For those that don't know, it causes you to periodically cough, not allowing you to actually play the game for periods of time, while watching yourself get beat up. It's super fun, and I'm so glad that games are still using mechanics that just stop you from interacting with them. We should add more things like sleep and paralysis and stun into games. No, I'm not being sarcastic at all. Why would I be sarcastic about... Despite my condition, I was able to kill it on my first go and pick up the last major piece of equipment for the run. Tentacles. I don't think I really need to explain that. They speak for themselves. Okay, fine. They more or less teleport to enemy locations and give them a weapon. They also heal me a bit more than my other summons do, but they attack less, so they're alright. Better than nothing, at least. Unless you're going up against bosses that primarily fly. Still good for bringing down the arm dude, but most of this fight is just running away. And if there's one thing I've practiced this run, it's running away. The second thing that I've practiced is falling off of cliffs. Beef Chadwick the Third had finally reached his true form for the remainder of the run. As Beef Chadwick the Third, I had almost everything that I would need for the run. Summons in every slot, rings and amulets for near everything. Defense and offense out the wazoo. It was time to clean up shop in a way that only Beef Chadwick the Third can. I roamed through the streets that combusted at the very notion of having to do battle with the beast himself. I had my pick of how I wanted to clear things out. And while I didn't waste a lot of time with enemies, I wasted a lot of enemies. The build finally felt good. Really good. I can't tell my flyers what to do, but I can tell them when to come in and when to blow up. I can set my turret to cover whatever area I want, aim at any enemy to have it focus them, or tell it to figure it out on its own. I can buff it to give it temporary infinite ammo, and when all else fails, I've got a homing swarm and tentacle duo to clean up the rest. Wouldn't you agree, guy that I saved but is currently still on fire due to weird timing of the rescue? Great sewers. I don't know, seem kind of mediocre to me. Hey, Greg, I'm sorry. I know I left a bad review on your residence, but you don't need to freak out like that. Look, the other Gregs are taking this way better. Well, Greg 2 didn't like that. This fight is admittedly more gimmicks, but I like the direction of this one. Up here, you're at risk of being attacked by a bunch of different ranged attacks. But down there are a ton of enemy slugs. You have to balance which you want to be safe from, and I enjoy the threat assessment style of things going on here. But with my ability to just lay down a rapid-fire death machine, the little fiasco wouldn't last for all that long. Damn, ranged enemies just can't stop me anymore. If anything, they're easier than melee-focused enemies. And the next area doesn't have any cliffs. What could you throw at me that could even stand a chance at getting in my way? Ah! Basic navigation through a sort of mildly twisty and turny asylum. That'd do it. Man, isn't getting lost fun? You get to meet all sorts of new and exciting people along the way. Okay, listen, it says minions under your name. I'm assuming that means you get help as a bonus effect, so one summoner to another, you're genuinely one of the worst bosses I've seen grace my screen while playing this game. Your lesser version is thematically cool, and it sort of feels like it pays homage to Bloodborne. You, on the other hand, have a little bit more health, and you look like you're from a cartoon where someone fed you something extra spicy. So blow off whatever fumes you got brewing in there, and go find someone who cares about you, bud, because you're uninspired at best and lazy at worst. I stepped through a portal, which led me across a bridge, which led me down a hall, which fed into an unnoteworthy room, which led into a series of stairs in a place that was both hall and tunnel, all to get to some giant woman. And I want to be more than someone who gets to see a giant woman. I suppose if I give it a chance, I could see a huge dance, because you are a giant woman. This whole visit, though, was just to send me elsewhere. I love when games do that. I'm supposed to hunt down the huntress and be once again mocked by my inability to get the summon that I know she possesses. She could just hand it over and I'd be fine with leaving her alone. So really, if anything, this is of her own doing. I'm just here doing my job, and she's here to make things difficult because, yeah, she's totally optional. I went ahead and went through another portal, and I'm off to... I guess things kind of went full circle at some point. This was significantly easier than the last time. Funny how that works. Something about having overwhelming damage, though, is pretty overwhelming for the poor guy. I'd say he almost stood a chance, but that wasn't true several hours ago, and it definitely isn't true now. I got back to the asylum, which had me going to a weird mirror dimension thing to fight a Nightweaver. thing. I'm really glad that despite spider-like themes, it's not in fact a spider. Does a lot of damage though. Truth be told, were it not for my turret and her low health, this might legitimately have been difficult. With the constant damage I was dealing, my health topped up pretty quickly. Of course though, this is phase 2. You get sucked into this hellhole, and the small area to combat her made things a bit spookier. I would like to stop to say that genuinely, the theming here was top-notch. I adore the aesthetic, and I'm not sure how easy this place would be on the eyes for an extended period of time for people that are prone to motion sickness, but I loved it. What I didn't love was being one-shot from full health by an attack that I didn't see coming. On my second go, I actually used my relic, which restores mod power to hit her with the nanoswarm. You know, speed things up just a tad. Making full use of my abilities and bursting her down, she wasn't long for this world or any other. Can we just acknowledge that the first game had a boss called Shroud that was basically the same, and this one has Shrewd? What is this and why? Beef Chadwick the Third is not amused. The hell is this wall bug? It's not even perfectly consistent, but it's flippin' weird. Just, what are you, wall? And I spent hours, just hours searching for this place, for this boss. The wiki, YouTube, my friends, and even friends of friends all assured me that this place existed. If you somehow don't know, the places in each world are randomized. I rolled this world over and over again searching for this boss. This one boss, all to hedge my bets against a boss that I was warned about. But finally, I found it. Dave here holds the last piece that I need. All I've got to do is handle him like I handled Alan. And also not get grabbed. Yeah, fighting out of grab attacks is kind of not using a summon. These things carry you to a lethal height and then just let go, and I kept screwing it up. So I had to get a lot more aggressive about my handling of enemies, but eventually I got through and finalized my build, because I hit the skill cap. There is one, and I hit it a while ago in terms of playtime. With double the health on my summons, I finally felt good about going forward with the final area. I also picked up an amulet just in case by skipping through a lot of dialogue. It would be nothing I hadn't handled before. Look, I don't even need my arms to be attached to handle this. I was ready. Physically. Mentally. Summoningly. It is my calling. It is what I aspire to be. Ambitiously lazy, carried forward by my own stubbornness and the support of my AI companions as they hard carry me through trial after trial. Pete here was capable of doing a lot of damage really fast, but it also had next to no health to spare. Could burst me down if it could survive long enough, and it did a couple of times, but it required about as much thought as... What was I saying? The next one was an edgy death trap. Seriously, look at it. It's like death trap, but trying too hard. And also hitting pretty hard. But I'd built up enough defense and healing that I could stumble through this without much effort. It did take some, but not as much as you might think. I know I'm not good at these games, so I put a premium on increasing survivability. And between a ton of healing, a lot of armor, and buffs to both my damage reduction and my armor effectiveness, there's a lot that you can get away with. I even almost managed to get good for a minute there.
Are you ready?
Beef Chadwick the Third was born ready. And also I spent the last 30 or so hours preparing, so he feckin' better be. What came next was a boss that I'd heard a fair bit about. I'd seen it in action as a warning of what I was doing all of this for. Truth be told, I was worried I would have to start over on a lower difficulty. But that's not the kind of person we're dealing with today. He's cut from leaner stuff. Tougher. More resilient than his peers. Also, I stacked with a lot of survivability, and not even this thing could chew through my lack of skill. Admittedly, it took a few tries. It took some trial and error, figuring out what I could get away with. The healing potential of my turret was huge. I'd use it to fly through phase 1, but it became vital in phase 2. It could shoot down the orbs that would otherwise thrash my health during this phase, so I saved it for specifically when it started its big orb room attack. For those curious, here are my traits and how I spent them. Here's my gear and what carried me through a whole lot of nonsense. While I let this boss fight play, I'd like to thank today's sponsor. Is me! Or, sort of. I don't know how to do these things. I'm not cool enough for Gearbox to be nice to me, or maybe it has something to do with me constantly making fun of their games, showing off bugs and whatnot. But I've been told bigger, cooler YouTubers are supposed to announce things, and so today I'm officially announcing channel memberships. Truth be told though, they're more or less just here for the folks that really want to support the channel. Go the extra mile to help make my dumb videos a reality. Try as I might, I haven't really worked out what to offer except my thanks. I don't want to block anything off. If you want to join the Discord, it's in the description. You won't be charged a dime. There's no paid hierarchy, there aren't any exclusive channels, videos, or anything major. It's important to me that nobody's missing out because of a paywall. I wouldn't have this sort of thing up if I didn't understand that it can be hard to make ends meet, so please don't ever consider giving any more than you're comfortable with, for me or anyone else. Make sure you are taken care of, first and foremost. I don't really want to make these sorts of announcements regularly, but I'm pretty sure one of my mods is going to bludgeon me if I don't at least try to learn to plug things more professionally from time to time. But in the grand scheme of things, all this fight took was just a wee bit of skill. A whole lot of planning. Once again proving that the true power is the friends that we made along the way. The same mod didn't seem pleased to know just how much better my build turned out compared to theirs. Get summoned on, you gunslinger. Plot and I defeat the root once and for all by once again following the plan of, if I can't have it, then nobody can. But with the entire universe. And then after the credits roll, it kind of goes back to the way it was, so there's something left to do with the eventual DLC. So that's the thing. On that note, though, I hope you enjoyed your time here. You probably know how to use social media, and I hope that means we'll get to hear your thoughts now and on any future outings. Until then, remember to stay safe, spread some kindness in the world, and regardless of what you give, even if only a moment of your time to come see what I'm getting up to, then thank you so much. And I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.